Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bengal Tiger podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Shea Dixon. Shea, we talked about doing a podcast, earlier in the week, Tuesday or Wednesday, and then I was like, oh, maybe Thursday, and then we pushed it back to Friday, and I think we made the right choice. I think we made the right
Yeah,
choice.
I said let this one ride. The portal opened on Tuesday, the spring portal. Now, there are two portal windows. One was the traditional one, which was in December, January. It goes for 30 days. LSU added 6 players then. They saw 14 players leave. And that's when the bulk of the movement happened to Matty B. But this spring portal window started on Tuesday, ends on April 13th. So 2 weeks where guys after spring ball can say, hey, I want to make a move. And I said this in every write up we had. I said it on the podcast ahead of it, that the movement that would come for LSU in the spring portal would be guys who saw where they were repping during spring practices, know that more guys, whether it's high school signees are coming this summer or portal additions are coming, and say, hey, I'm better off probably going somewhere else and looking for playing time. So 20 total, and I know it sounds like a lot, 20 total portal guys or Tigers have entered the portal this offseason between portal 1 and the current portal 2. 6 so far in portal window number 2, 3 of them here on Friday, Matty B. But at the same time, added 6 in the first window, have added 1 so far in Wisconsin's Gio Paez, a defensive tackle, in the second portal window, puts the number at 7. So net of 13, 20 into the portal, 7 out. We still expect more attrition, more guys to enter, them to still get some more guys, but they are for the first time under the 85-man scholarship limit, which was the goal and part of this natural attrition that's occurring. So that kind of lays out what's been going on. But I want to hear some of your reactions here. 6 guys hit the portal. None of them starters, all of them backups. But let's start with today's entrants because all 3 of them were 2023 signees, meaning they were freshmen this past fall. And we'll start with the first guy. Ryan Yates entered, safety out of Denton Guyer. Then we saw Jeremiah Hughes, cornerback, who played about 20-something snaps as a backup corner last year, and they were really hurting at corner. So he got into the rotation some, but the bulk of his all 13 games played was on special teams, and he's coming out of Las Vegas in Nevada, Bishop Gorman. Yeah. Plays a year, now he's in the portal. And then the third guy, Christian Braithwaite, who they signed out of East Texas, was really running third string all spring behind your 2 starting linebackers in Perkins and Penn, and then the Weeks brothers. Then you had Braithwaite, and you've brought in 3 linebacker signees in Blake Baker's first class here. So as you look at just these 3 guys, gauge your reaction. Not surprised at all, a little surprised. Where are you at with this group?
Between Braithwaite, Hughes, and Yates, I'm not surprised. I think Yates is the one that I think had the most upside and potential. We saw that last year, right? We saw him get on the field and make some plays. We saw him kind of they started going to him, especially when they started going more dime packages and changing up their nickel looks. I think Yates was even someone who I thought could compete with Jordan Allen in terms of the 2 deep. Moving forward, we'll see, Deshaun McBride has stepped in at the safety spot. And now without it being like a true nickel, it being that star position, I think is being more aggressive than just a true nickel. There might not be like an obvious spot for Yates on this team in terms of how his skill set matches up. And, Kylan Jackson, I think, has stepped up in a big way throughout the spring and proven that he's capable of filling that role. And that's another guy that Yates will be in direct competition with throughout his career if he stayed. The path, and also knowing, I think this is a new coaching staff, especially with the defensive backs and Corey Raymond and all the guys and how they're kind of constructing this defense. Like, I think there's a lot of reasons for Yates to move on, but he's the one out of these 3 that I think had the most potential to potentially crack a starting lineup with either as a junior or a senior.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with, I think, how this one played out with Yates, who is very talented, but comes out of a Denton Guyer program that's one of the best in the country, not just Texas. And he was so well coached, refined, knows the game, and is a good athlete. So you put all that together, And with LSU short on defensive backs, safeties last year, Matty B, who were ready beyond Major Burns and Andre Sam, Yates was that guy. And
Yeah.
Yates had, I'm looking at it now, 124 snaps played last year as a backup on defense, kind of split dead even between rush defense and coverage. Didn't really get used that often in the pass rush. I think he had two of the
Yeah.
124 snaps for a pass rush snap. But to give it to you, so 124 snaps for him, the two starters carried Major Burns 771 snaps more than anyone on the team. Andre Sam right behind him at 692. So those two guys played the whole time. And when they needed someone else, it was Yates. Now, as you noted, a new defensive staff comes in, a new scheme, and Yates was taking reps behind Major Burns at the star position, which is a little closer to line of scrimmage, fits him well. He's physical.
Yes.
But even at the end of last year, we started to see Kylan Jackson play more. It was like they needed time with Kylan Jackson. And now Kylan Jackson was that second team guy coming out of Zachary at the position behind Major Burns. So for that reason, I almost feel like for Yates, he was so ready to play, but by the time Kylan Jackson got ready, or by the time maybe Deshaun McBride's ready, where does he stack up on the depth chart? And that's a decision obviously Yates had to make and say, hey, look, maybe I'm going to head elsewhere. And I'll kind of, I know people say grass is always greener. I think in this case, it will be for him.
Yeah, and Yates obviously like has the size to potentially play that star position, but in high school he bounced between corner and safety a lot. I think he was primarily used at corner if I'm remembering correctly at Geyer, and then he came over here to try to be a safety. I just think that the competition aspect of it's going to be real. It would have been really interesting and how it would have shaken out with him and Kylan Jackson. So that is a loss, but also through Jordan Allen in that mix. But it's a loss, but like you said, it's not something that's going to impact them for 2024 in terms of, oh, how are they going to defend USC without Ryan Yates? And then you go to the other two real quick. Christian Brathwaite, like you said, been running third team out out of high school. Like he was a high 3-star, low 4-star guy. I think 400th in the country. Uh, I saw like potential, but you could tell like Whit Weeks was a different level. So it's hard when you have someone of that caliber stepping in. And then Harold Perkins moving inside as well. And Jeremiah Hughes out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. It's tough because I'm not sure how, like, if there was a path for him getting on the field, especially with Corey Raymond coming in, who wants kind of, I don't know, more athleticism, more guys that are
Long.
kind of aggressive on the long, aggressive on the ball. And I don't know if that fits Jeremiah Hughes. I don't even know if in college or in high school how aggressive he was on the ball.
Yeah, none of these are surprising, I don't think, based off where they were repping in spring ball. And even with them trying to find answers at corner, we didn't see Raymond turn to Hughes a lot. And look, Hughes has already come out and said it was an amazing experience. Thanks, LSU. Yates has told Billy much of the same. Billy covered him pretty heavily in high school. So these guys get it. I think they're saying, hey, look, new staff's come in. Here's where I stack up. I'm going to go and now try to find playing time elsewhere. The other three, Connor Gilbreth, their JUCO tight end edition, he was really just a short yardage blocker. There was a hope from Denbrock that maybe one day he could develop into an offensive tackle. They've really had no trouble recruiting that position. Obviously, they're good with Will Campbell and Emory Jones, but even after that, Tyree Adams, Borderlawn, and now you've signed guys like Weston Davis and others. So I think they're fine there. Not surprising that Gilbreth leaves. Kyprion, an in-state kid who made a big play for a touchdown in the spring game, but was one of the only guys that didn't play last year. So I don't know if he was banged up during the year or what, but just didn't see any game action at all. So something probably a little banged up there, but was good to go this spring. He hits and he was a St. James standout. He hits the portal with a no contact tag, and he will be at Tulane this weekend. So that could be a big pickup for the Green Wave. And who is our sixth guy? Oh, Jackson Howard, who
Jackson Howard
was the very first person to enter. And if you're looking at rankings, he was the highest ranked of all these guys, if I'm not mistaken. He was right outside the top 100. Number one player in Minnesota. And this speaks to something, and I think it plays in most here with him. You can say it to a degree with Jeremiah Hughes coming from Vegas or Nevada, but when you're LSU in the portal era, and we saw it this past class, Matty B, They went heavy on Louisiana and East Texas. Then they took PJ Woodland out of South Mississippi. Outside of that, border state guys, they only signed Colin Hurley out of Florida, Ethan Callaway out of North Carolina, and CJ Jackson out of Georgia. Those were the only three non-border state guys they took. The year prior, they were pretty heavy when Polian was here. They were kind of making that board about we'll go national. And guys like Jackson Howard get in the mix. He was the number one player in Minnesota, showed a lot of upside.
Mm-hmm.
Now, within a day of him hitting the portal, he had committed to Minnesota. He's going
Yeah.
back home, and it makes complete sense, right? And he wasn't going to start this year. He wasn't going to be second team, but he's a talented enough player to, had he stayed around long enough, he develops into somebody that's a good player for you, much like a Quincy Wiggins who left for Colorado.
Yeah.
But you also understand that, hey, if he thinks he's not playing now, then he's going to have to sit into year 3 and be that far away from home and still maybe not play. So going back home, committing to a Minnesota, that makes total sense. And I think we'll see, and this is not a knock on Jackson Howard at all. I think he's a very good player, but less of going for national types unless it's just an absolute no, like a Bryce Underwood, you're not turning away from Michigan. But
Yeah.
when you get yourselves into these recruitments where you know a guy won't play for a year or two, this is the risk you take.
Yeah, I think Jackson Howard is the one outside of Lance Hurd. Like Lance Hurd, if you're ranking those 20 portal departures, I think it's, unless I'm forgetting someone, it's Lance Hurd 1, and it's probably Jackson Howard 2. Jalen Brown is, maybe up there as well. But like, I think Howard, with
But
the emergence of, go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. And then I'll finish that.
I was just gonna say, with the emergence of Gabriel Leford, it
Yep.
really neutralizes, I think, the need, and also similar to Ryan Yates, like it adds another player of competition. Deshaun Womack, regardless of which edge position he's at, is going to be a major factor. So like you said, there's not even a guarantee that next year he's starting, or in the 2 deep potentially. Like we haven't seen CJ Jackson yet, who I actually liked out of high school a good amount. So
Right.
there's a lot of there's a lot of talent, a lot of potential there. But I do, to your point, I wasn't like the highest. I think I had Jackson Howard like 12th or 13th on my like personal rankings of that class. So like I was, in the middle, but still a borderline top 100 player that I think actually will do really, really well at Minnesota.
I think as well with a guy like Jalen Brown, who transferred in the early period, a top 100 receiver coming out of Florida. It's LSU's just never hurting at receiver, which is why sticking to Louisiana guys and East Texas guys has worked for them. It's worked for well over a decade where they haven't had a top 3 receiver that isn't from Louisiana or East Texas. And really the only Texas kid that was in there is Brandon LaFell, like 12 years ago. So seeing Jalen Brown leave after a year when all 4 of the signees took a red shirt to go back to Florida State in his home state, not a surprise. Like that's the kind of stuff that can
Yeah.
happen. In fact, of those 20 transfers, Matty B, when you look at the out-of-state guys, well over half of them have already committed to a school back in their home state. So I just think this is going to be a trend in the portal.
I mean, in terms of positions, like the only positions I think LSU has to go out of state for on a consistent basis is quarterback and offensive line.
Yeah, but when it gives you Will Campbell and Emory
Yeah,
Jones
I
and
know, but
Devin
like,
Harper and Tyree Adams and so on, you feel good about it.
yeah, for sure. So it's like, it obviously Louisiana, East Texas, we know the pipelines, we know the recruiting regions of LSU. So it's set them up nicely. And I think also with the portal era, being able to bring back Louisiana players that, left the state or whatnot that are coming back home. We saw that in year 1 a lot. We'll see that more moving forward. I don't have any thoughts on Prion and Gilbreth, besides I'm going to be
Yeah, and
real
they had
sad.
moved Prion from wide receiver to DB a little
Yeah,
bit. I think that if he does land at Tulane, that would be a big get for them, for
I
an
know.
in-state
I'm
kid like
scared.
that.
As a North Texas fan, I'm scared.
You
Shea.
liked Prion, you love Prion coming out. So, uh, who else is out there? That's the 6. Okay, so 6 departures right now puts them at 83 total scholarship players. You can have 85. As I said, we expect some more attrition. We will also here quickly get to who do they add? And Brian Kelly very matter-of-factly said defensive tackles. That is the focus of our spring portal kind of push is defensive tackles. So far, The only offers we've seen out and visits set up have gone to defensive tackles. But before we get there, like we said, a little more attrition expected. I won't be shocked if there were another in the DB room. They have like, I'd have to count it up, but there were like 20 guys in
Yes.
between corner, star, and safety this offseason. We've seen 2 now leave for the portal. Wouldn't be shocked if another. Certainly you're looking, and again, at receiver, I think is the same, like Prion left, but could there be one more guy who finds himself on the back end and leaves? That wouldn't shock me. But 2 guys who have been injured. Langlois been injured for years at safety. Ibiet has been injured now with his hip for a couple seasons, trying to battle through it. At receiver, keeping an eye on those guys. I think special teams is one to keep an eye on. Like, you've got 5 guys on scholarship, Matty B, but Dybert, who has been on, a kicker now for 2 years, is being relegated to kickoff duties. And he was one of the top kickers in the country coming out, but hasn't beaten out Ramos, who was a walk-on that Greg McMahon brought in, who has multiple years of eligibility left. And then you flip it over to punter. If anyone listened to Brian Kelly after the spring game, when he made those comments about D tackle is the only thing I see a focus on in the portal, like 3 minutes later, rips into the punter situation and said
Yep.
it was very bad. He hated seeing the production from it, and now he wants competition there. So do they go get a punter? Like we already saw it the first time go around when he brought Jay Bramplett from Notre Dame.
Yep. They have 3 kickers right now on scholarship. That just feels
One of them isn't on campus yet either, and Aaron Burrell. So
Aaron.
that would be a guy who then you add, and what is that, like, is Dybert sandwiched now in between 2 guys?
It's yeah, I don't know. I don't know this, but I'm assuming there's aren't many P4 teams that have 3 kickers, 3 scholarship kickers on their roster.
Well, and what happened here was Ramos was a PWO who earned a
Yes.
scholarship because he ends up becoming a 2-year starter for you.
Yeah, and you can get those types of kickers. Like if you don't have a Cade York, if you don't have and obviously the thought was that Nathan Dybert was
Cole
going to
Tracy,
become, yeah, if you don't have those guys, the thought was Dybert was going to evolve into that, and he just hasn't. So like at a
where he
certain
hasn't
point,
beaten out Ramos.
yes, at a certain point, you have to have a quick trigger with the special teams spots. Like I just think you do. You can't be sacrificing
Um,
a depth piece at defensive line or something like that for a third kicker.
yeah. I'm with you. So those are spots we're keeping an eye on. I know people have asked about quarterback. We haven't discussed it much this offseason because Nussmeier is the quarterback, the QB1 for this team, the starter. Heir apparent to Jaden Daniels has been seen through as he got all the first team reps in the spring. They bring in AJ Swan from Vanderbilt, who has got double-digit starts versus SEC teams playing at Vandy. He split reps with Ricky Collins, and then Colin Hurley came in as an early enrollee. With Bryce Underwood committed and signing in December, the only person in that group, like Nussmeier is starting, Swan
Yeah.
just transferred here, Colin Hurley just got here, so the only other guy would be Ricky Collins. So if there is any quarterback movement departure-wise from LSU, I would have to think it would be teams maybe trying to flirt to get Collins to get into the portal. But again, that's just me giving you a rundown of each position.
Yeah. Do you, real quick, so do we think there's like a 0% chance they add anybody other than a defensive tackle in the portal?
No, I don't think 0. I think, again, special teams could be one. And then I'm not going to rule out a best available. Or if they do take a running back but at running back, you can only take, in my mind, a veteran who has like 1 year of eligibility
Like
because,
a Noah Kane?
yeah, someone who's only going to be here 1 year. Because
Yeah.
next year, then you're in year 2 of Caden Durham, year 3 of Caleb Jackson and Holly, and then of also bringing in Harlan Berry and JT Lindsay and then whomever else you add if it's a James Simon or beyond. So
Yeah.
I think if they're all healthy, they can get through with 4 this year. But if Frank Wilson sees a need, I would think he's leaning to give me a Josh Williams type, right? Give me someone who has a year left, can be a 3-down back, and I can trust to toss out there for 5 carries a game or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think running back, and it would just be really interesting if like a perfect scenario happened at like corner. If it was like a like a Jerick Bernard Converse
We've done this
suddenly.
before, though.
I know, but like it would just be interesting to me. That's all. It would
Well,
be
it
interesting.
could still be that people forget Zy Alexander is hurt, but does he come back and take that QB1,
Yeah.
CB1, cornerback one role back over? And then when J.K. Johnson gets healthy, or does he get healthy and factor in, I'm not sure, but it's going to be interesting. Corner's the one we're watching.
Yeah.
And I think that at least in terms of how does that current depth chart play out. And I said before, we won't know till fall camp, the end of fall camp, who really they trust is the guys they're playing with at the 2 corner spots. We know safety, we know the star spot. We don't know yet what they're going to do at corner. So big offseason ahead for Corey Raymond. We'll see. Look, Cormani McLean entered the portal this week. And we got it confirmed through sources. LSU is matter of factly not going to be in the mix there. Obviously, it's almost kind of like a Denver Harris situation
I was
again, where a
gonna say,
highly touted kid gets
yeah.
booted off of a team, and now who takes him next? But I'm with you. Okay, we'll keep an eye out. First, let's catch an ad. My Perfect Franchise. You guys know him, Andy Ludicky. We talk about him, Matthew and I, after every game on the weekends with our instant reaction pods, and then during our recruiting pods and mailbag pods as well. So we'll bring him into the transfer portal pod here. And look, Andy, you know, My Perfect Franchise. Find him at myperfectfranchise.net. And what he does is in the name. Andy has been in as a franchise owner or franchisee for decades, and now has kind of quit his day job, and this is his new job, is helping other people get into it. But his rundown is this: ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream? Is it a side hustle while you work your current job? Is it leaving a legacy, something to pass on to your kids, something to get involved with your kids or some friends on? Andy says he's touched on all these things. He can help out as a franchise consultant now, but also a longtime owner. He has helped hundreds find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, which is key, time to commit, which is obviously big, and more. And the best part, 100% free. To reach out to him, give him a call, email, anything if you've got questions about business ownership and want to know more about what he does. So check him out, myperfectfranchise.net, or Andy at myperfectfranchise.net is his email. That's Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Or give him a ring, 404-973-9901. That's 404-973-9901. I already had a couple of people tell me in the past month that they'd hit up Andy and he'd answered right away. And they chatted for a while about his role and kind of getting into becoming a franchise owner, or at least seeing what kind of dipping a toe into the water and what's there. So shout out to Andy for always supporting us. And as we move forward here, Maddie B, you mentioned a Bernard Converse, someone who was a sneaky addition and then ends up being a full-time starter for you at corner. It seems they are very much looking for a Jordan Jefferson type right now too, a sneaky player out of West Virginia at DT that we don't talk about a ton, but suddenly he's a really key player for you, this past season. Jordan Jefferson has turned pro. He was out of eligibility, but Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo as well. Those were all three of the guys who took all the reps at defensive tackle last year, majority. Jacobian Guillory and Jalen Lee are your only 2 players on scholarship from the 2023 team that played DT, nose tackle, you name it. There were just 2 of them that returned. So that is why Brian Kelly said priority number 1 is in the spring portal is the tackle. We know that they've got some high school signees. Maddie B, they've got a 5-star coming to campus, and Dominic McKinley this summer in June, who they signed in February. But you're Bo Davis. You're the new D-line coach. You don't want to lean on a true freshman right away to carry any sort of real significant weight for you in the middle of the trenches against the O-lines that you'll be facing. So to buy time to develop those guys, you need portal additions. And here we are. They have added one in Gio Paez out of Wisconsin. He's a guy who told me, and that's their one addition so far, but he said that Bo Davis likes him because he can play DT or nose. And he feels like in Blake Baker's scheme, they can kind of bounce him around a little bit. He's a veteran. He's a grad student. He's played a ton of games on a very physical Wisconsin team. So I think that's a good addition when you're talking wanting to add 2 or 3 is what LSU wants to do, defensive tackles. Then everybody said, Maddie B, when's the rest of the news going to come? Well, Tuesday came and the portal opened. It's Friday, and there has been a wave of defensive tackle news. How do you want to run this down? Should I just kind of give the breakdown, or where do we start here? Because, look, yes, they have one added in Gio Paez, but they've quickly offered and been in the mix here now for a handful of others.
Yeah. Real quick thought on Gio Paez. I do think that we'll have to see more of him. He didn't play as much as like a Jordan Jefferson did, but I do think there is potential versatility there. He started off as a defensive end at Wisconsin. He's 6'3", 310. I think he can very easily play any of those two, either position for LSU. And to your point, not only do you not want to play Dominic McKinley, or at least not, put the thrusters all the way forward with him. You don't want to have to rely on Kimo Makinyole or Sean Washington and Jalen Lee, who apparently looks like he got passed by Kimo Makinyole during the spring. So, like, there's just so many holes to fill. I think Gio Paez is a great start. We'll have to see because he's played 34 games. He's made 36 tackles in his career. We'll have to see like how ready he really is, but he's old, he's big, he's versatile. So I like that addition. Now I think you can just run through the other four.
Yeah, and look, I think at the end of I think that people too are viewing, and look, Paez could be a breakout player for him,
Yeah.
but I think people are viewing it in a linear fashion of, is this it? Like, there's got to be more, right? Like, had they already gotten two guys where you said this guy's had 30 plus starts and this guy's got, 100 plus games played, and you've added Paez as well, you would consider that to be a really elite haul, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, we got a potential starter, maybe two, we got a definite rotation guy, and not that Paez won't battle to start, but you get my point that
Yes.
just his commitment comes first. You don't know what's left to come, so you don't know how to view it. But
Yeah.
I think that when we step back at the end and look at their additions, that this will look like a real solid haul. Paez would be someone anybody then would say, yeah, I'm glad they added him to the roster. Here comes the wave of guys. All right, so D tackle start hitting the portal. D tackle is the number one target for so many teams. It
Yeah.
seems like that's the consensus, that there's just not a lot of D tackles out there, and a lot of teams need them, which means a lot of teams are battling now to get these top guys. LSU has gone quickly to work here. Right when guys hit the portal, LSU's on them, watching film, making contact. Now they set up a trio of visits. These are all big. So Simeon Barrow Jr. out of Michigan State, vet, 30 starts, over 100 career tackles, 10 plus sacks, right at almost 20 career tackles for loss. He's forced some fumbles. He hit the portal, and now he has scheduled a visit for LSU. He tells On3's Chad Simmons and Pete Nakos he will be in town beginning on Sunday, and that's the first visit he has reported. That was probably some of the biggest news to hit this week. And for LSU to immediately get the first visit, Matty B, I think is notable.
Yeah. I this is the type of player that, like you said, the order is interesting because they added Paez first, but it's like they added Barrow and then Paez had been like, okay, they're cooking with grease. Um, I'll let you get to the other ones as well, but there are also some interesting names, and it's not just from a Michigan State. You have Kent State
Yeah.
on here, TCU, and so on.
I'll run them down, then you give your reaction.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so Michigan State's Simeon Barrow Jr. Is the first guy who will visit. He will visit on Sunday, as we said. He's confirmed that with On3. Next week, LSU will host CJ West, who was maybe arguably the biggest splash that hit the portal coming out of Kent State. He's been an all-conference selection. He has posted over 110 tackles in his career, or posted over 110 tackles, 19 and a half for loss, 7 sacks, 36 games played. His numbers look a lot like Simeon Barrow's, so both these guys are in very high demand. But Arkansas, Miami, A&M, you name it, everybody went after it. He tweeted out, I think, like 20 offers. Matt Zenitz was the first to report this. We've got it confirmed, though, that next week, and he's working on locking in the date right now, is what I had sources tell me right before we got on the podcast, and working on locking in the date for the visit, meaning he's got so many teams pushing to get him on campus that he's figuring out, what order do I go in here geographically that makes sense. So he's going to hit a little bit of a world tour here, it seems. But that was a big one to see them not only offer, but quickly say, all right, by next week. He entered the portal on Tuesday. Within a week, he's going to be on LSU's campus. So massive news there. Then last night, we get piece number 3 here. Demonic Williams out of TCU. This is a guy who started all 15 games when TCU went to the national championship in 2022. He was playing college football at 17 years old, started all 12 games this past year for TCU. Honorable mention for Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year. This is when you look at defensive tackles who immediately went into a place on the younger side and played 2 years and made major splashes. Williams is about as big as it gets. And he has now announced through Hayes Fawcett at On3 that April 30th to May 1st will be at LSU. But kicking off this weekend, Oklahoma spring game, then he'll see Texas, then Colorado, LSU, and then Missouri and Oregon. TBD, they could come after LSU. He may not take those visits. We'll see. But 60 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, about 5 sacks in 2 years played, where he has started in every single game he's been in college. Now comes with 2 more years of eligibility remaining. So those were 3 of the biggest names to hit the portal at DT this week. And LSU's now locked in visits from all 3 of them.
Yeah, and Williams is the only one that's not a senior. To your
Correct.
point, I think you take Williams obviously because of how good he is and how talented he is, but it's not a necessity that you need multiple years out of this position. So that opens up the door to where you can take players with 2 years left, 3 years left, 1 year left. Like, I think LSU's in such a, I don't want to say desperate spot, but it feels appropriate. Yeah, they need talent. They need talent. They need players, and it doesn't matter if it's a 1 year fix, 2 year fix. They just need players here for Bo Davis to coach, because turning offensive lineman to defensive lineman, adding JUCO guys, like, it's just not sustainable, and it will lose them games in the SEC this year if they don't get help. And they know that. And that's, everybody in the world knows that. And that's why defensive tackle is, and I wrote this story remember after Michigan won the title, I wrote that story about the defensive
Yeah.
tackle position. And like, that's just the way college football is right now. Georgia, Michigan, Alabama for a while, and probably still the defensive tackle spot dictates
Auburn
really.
for a bit.
Yeah, Auburn for, like, that dictates your defensive ceiling. It dictates how good you can be as a defense, because those guys just control the game in such a big way on that side of the ball. So we knew this was going to happen. It's interesting how fast it's happened and how quickly they've moved. But in this defensive tackle economy, you can't wait. You can't waste time.
The D-tackle economy, that's what we're
There you go.
living in right now until April 30th.
Yeah.
But huge news there. I will add LSU did host Indiana transfer Philip Bleedy a week ago. So he visited Washington, then LSU. Then he took a visit to Auburn on Monday. He was going to be at OU this weekend. Then he said maybe Missouri. After visiting Auburn, he then announced he was no longer going to visit Oklahoma, was unsure about his visit to Missouri, told On3 still wants to make a decision this month. There's buzz coming out of Auburn that coming off that Auburn visit to then cancel the OU visit and be kind of so-so on visiting Missouri, that he could be the guy. But from speaking to source, or he could be a guy that lands at Auburn. But from speaking to sources after landing Paez, would they take Bleedy? Yes. And you can look at the stats here. I don't even need sources to tell you. These guys that are entering now are even a step above that. These are guys who are very high-level players and with a lot of production. So you're right. It's happening fast. We will keep you updated on all this stuff on the Bengal Tiger. We are posting about it daily. We spent all day yesterday talking about it, D-tackle stuff. Today we spent all day talking about portal departures and potential additions. I will still say there could be a guy that hits the portal that I know a lot of people have speculated about from Louisiana that would be a fit at LSU and a take. We'll see if that unfolds. I'm not into the public tampering, rumor mongering at all.
Yeah.
So once a guy hits a portal, we'll talk about it. But here's 3 guys that we really weren't talking about a week ago. 3 hit the portal. Bo Davis and LSU go after him, and all 3 of them are now set to visit within the next couple of weeks. So Matty B, that is the portal pod that catches us up. True to what he said, and we'll see if it sticks that way, Brian Kelly is going after defensive tackles first and foremost.
There you go. So yeah, thank you all for joining us. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already.
Subscribe to the site. It's $1 to be a member of the Bengal Tiger right now. And you get everything on the Bengal Tiger. You get everything on 3, every transfer portal article that's premium that's written, you get to read. Steve Wiltfong joined us, and now we've got Wiltfong and Chad Simmons on the national beat. Obviously, Hayes and Tipton crush it. on breaking news with basketball and football,
Yep.
and then Pete Nakos has been owning the portal. So it's been a lot of fun. $1. Do us a favor. If you enjoyed the pod today, just go over and sign up if you haven't.
Yeah. Good pitch. Shay's got to go on a Hunt's radio show at 2 o'clock. So they're probably calling right now. But yeah, thank y'all for joining us, and we will talk to y'all later.